Nothing prepares you for what Landman Season 2, Episode 8 does to Tommy. This episode doesn't explode all at once. It tightens slowly, scene by scene, until you suddenly realize there is no escape left for him. Every choice, every silence, every half-truth finally comes back with weight. This is not an episode about action or spectacle. It is about pressure, and by the end of it, that pressure becomes unbearable. The episode opens in a way that immediately tells you something is off. There is a heaviness hanging over everything, like the calm before a storm, that everyone feels but no one wants to name. Tommy is still moving forward, still acting like the man who has all the answers, but the cracks are impossible to miss now. The confidence he wears feels thinner. His patience is shorter. Even his body language gives him away. He listens, but not fully. He responds, but carefully. This episode makes it painfully clear that Tommy is no longer making decisions. He is reacting, and that is far more dangerous. What makes it worse is that everyone around him still believes he's in control. They trust him, they lean on him, and that trust becomes a quiet burden he never asked for, but also refuses to put down. One of the strongest parts of this episode is how it handles silence. Conversations don't rush. Words hang in the air longer than they should. You can feel what isn't being said just as clearly as what is. Tommy keeps choosing restraint, thinking that holding things together means holding things back. But the more he stays quiet, the more isolated he becomes. He convinces himself that protecting people means carrying the truth alone. And this episode slowly shows how wrong that thinking is. Every moment he delays the truth, the situation grows heavier, more complicated, and harder to fix. There's a sense that even if he wanted to be honest now, he wouldn't know where to begin. What really makes episode 8 next level crazy is how it reframes everything we thought we understood before. Problems that once felt manageable suddenly feel permanent. There is no clean solution anymore, no smart deal that can make things right. The episode quietly tells us that the company isn't just struggling financially, it's bleeding trust, stability, and purpose. And Tommy feels that loss deeply, even if he refuses to say it out loud. He keeps telling himself there's still time, still one move left, still a way to fix it. But the episode keeps pushing back against that belief, reminding us that time is the one thing he no longer has. By the end of this section of the story, it becomes clear that episode 8 isn't setting up a comeback, it's setting up a reckoning. Tommy is standing in the middle of a mess that was built slowly over years, and now it's collapsing all at once. The tragedy isn't that he failed, it's that he tried so hard to be strong for everyone else that he never allowed himself to face the truth when it mattered most. And as the episode moves forward, that truth is no longer something he can outrun. The tension deepens when the episode shifts its focus to the people orbiting Tommy, because episode 8 makes it painfully clear that his choices are no longer affecting just him. Every conversation now carries consequences. Every look feels loaded. Rebecca, in particular, feels different in this episode. The fear she showed earlier hasn't disappeared. It's evolved. She's no longer reacting emotionally. She's calculating, watching closely, sensing that the ground beneath her is still unstable. There's a quiet awareness in her now, an understanding that whatever protection Tommy offered before may not last, and that realization hardens her. She doesn't panic anymore, she prepares. What makes these moments so effective is how understated they are. No one spells out the danger directly. Instead, the episode trusts the audience to feel it. Rebecca listens more than she speaks. She asks questions that seem simple on the surface, but carry sharp intent underneath. You can tell she's trying to map out the situation for herself to figure out how deep the damage really goes. And the more she learns, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just a bad quarter or a temporary setback. This is structural. Something is fundamentally broken, and no amount of optimism can cover it anymore. At the same time, Nate continues to loom quietly in the background, and episode 8 reminds us once again why underestimating him is a mistake. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't threaten, he simply observes and waits. Every move he makes feels deliberate, like he's already thinking 3 steps ahead while everyone else is still arguing about step 1. There's an unsettling calm to him in this episode, a sense that he already knows how this ends, and that calm makes his presence feel heavier than ever. When he speaks, it's not to comfort or reassure, it's to clarify consequences, and those consequences feel unavoidable. Meanwhile, Tommy keeps trying to outrun the weight pressing down on him. He convinces himself that if he can just hold things together a little longer, something will change, someone will step in, a miracle will happen. But episode 8 strips away that illusion piece by piece. Every conversation he has feels like a reminder that the walls are closing in. People are asking harder questions now. They want guarantees, they want certainty, and Tommy can't give them either. You can feel his frustration building, not just with the situation, but with himself. He knows he should speak up, he knows he should be honest, but fear keeps winning. What's truly unsettling is how the episode shows the cost of that fear. Tommy's silence doesn't preserve stability, it creates distance. People begin to sense that he's holding something back, even if they can't name it. Trust starts to fracture in small, almost invisible ways. A pause that lasts too long, an answer that feels rehearsed, a reassurance that doesn't quite land. These moments pile up, and the episode lets them breathe, making the discomfort impossible to ignore. By the time this part of the story settles, there's a clear shift in the tone. The hope that once lingered in the background is gone. In its place is a heavy realism, the kind that doesn't scream or panic, but quietly accepts that damage has already been done. Episode 8 makes one thing painfully clear. This situation is no longer about saving the company. It's about surviving the fallout. And whether Tommy realizes it yet or not, he's already standing at the edge of consequences he can't control.
As episode 8 pushes forward, it becomes less about strategy and more about inevitability. The story slows down in a way that feels intentional, almost cruel, forcing both Tommy and the audience to sit with the reality he's been avoiding. There's a growing sense that every door he thought was still open has quietly closed behind him. No dramatic announcements, no sudden explosions, just the realization that options have run out. And that realization hits harder than any twist could. Tommy starts to feel smaller in this part of the episode. Not weaker, but cornered. The authority he once carried so naturally now feels fragile, like it could collapse under the wrong question. He's still trying to lead, still trying to project confidence, but there's a visible disconnect between what he says and what he knows is true. That internal conflict becomes the emotional core of the episode. He wants to protect Cammy, protect the people who believe in him, protect the legacy he thinks still matters. But the cost of that protection keeps rising, and he's running out of things to sacrifice that aren't himself. Cammy, in contrast, feels heartbreakingly hopeful. Episode 8 makes her belief in Tommy almost painful to watch. She trusts him completely, not because she's naive, but because she needs to believe that someone can still make sense of the chaos. She sees the company as something worth saving, something that can still stand for more than money. And that faith, while beautiful, becomes dangerous. The episode quietly shows how her optimism gives Tommy an excuse to stay silent. As long as she believes, he doesn't have to shatter that belief. And so he waits. And that waiting becomes his greatest failure. The weight of the past also presses harder in this section. Loss is no longer a background theme, it's front and center. The absence of Cammy's husband hangs over everything, even when his name isn't spoken. Episode 8 makes it clear that the company didn't just lose a leader, it lost its foundation. And no one wants to admit that out loud, Tommy especially. He's been trying to build on something that no longer exists, hoping effort and loyalty could replace what was taken. But this episode slowly dismantles that hope, showing that grief doesn't disappear just because people refuse to look at it. There's a quiet cruelty in how the episode handles these moments. It doesn't rush them. It lets conversations stretch. It lets discomfort linger. You can feel Tommy reaching for reassurance and finding none. The people around him aren't cruel. They're tired. Tired of uncertainty. Tired of half answers. Tired of carrying faith without results. And that exhaustion feeds into the growing sense that something irreversible is coming. By the end of this section, Episode 8 feels less like a story about business and more like a story about denial, about how long a person can pretend things are fixable before reality forces a reckoning. Tommy isn't a villain here. He's human. He's afraid. And that fear has shaped every decision he's made. But the episode makes one thing clear. Fear doesn't stop consequences. It only delays them. And the longer the delay, the harder the fall will be when the truth finally surfaces. The final stretch of Landman Season 2, Episode 8 lands with a quiet devastation that feels far heavier than any dramatic confrontation could. This is where the episode stops circling the truth and finally forces it into the open. Tommy ends up where he's been subconsciously avoiding all along, sitting across from Galliano, a man who doesn't deal in comfort or illusions. There's no anger in this moment, no shouting, just honesty, stripped of mercy. Galliano doesn't tell Tommy anything he hasn't already sensed, he simply says it out loud, and that makes all the difference. The company, in Galliano's eyes, didn't start dying with bad decisions or financial losses. It died the moment Cammy's husband died. Everything since then has been an echo, an attempt to preserve something that no longer exists. Loyalty couldn't save it. Hard work couldn't revive it. And Tommy, for all his effort, was trying to resurrect a ghost. That truth lands hard because it reframes every sacrifice Tommy has made, every sleepless night, every lie of omission. None of it was enough, and none of it ever could have been. This is the moment where Tommy finally breaks, not outwardly, but internally. You can feel the shift. The resistance fades. The fight drains out of him. He realizes that the thing he's been protecting everyone from isn't failure, it's reality. And by delaying that reality, he's only made the damage worse. Cammy's trust, Rebecca's fear, the company's slow collapse, all of it traces back to his refusal to admit that some losses can't be undone, some endings can't be postponed. What makes this ending so haunting is that there's no clear villain. There's no single mistake to point to, just a series of human choices made out of love, fear, and loyalty. Episode 8 doesn't punish Tommy for caring. It shows the cost of caring without honesty. And that lesson sits heavy as the episode closes. There's no relief, no sudden hope, just the understanding that what's coming next will hurt, and there's no version of the future where everyone walks away intact. By the time the episode ends, Landman has fully shifted its focus. This is no longer a story about saving a company. It's a story about facing the truth when it's already too late to change it. Tommy finally understands that survival doesn't mean winning. Sometimes it just means accepting loss and living with the consequences. And that realization is what makes Season 2, Episode 8 feel truly next-level crazy. Not because of what happens, but because of what can't be undone.
After the truth finally settles, the episode doesn't rush to close the wound. Instead, it lets it ache. Episode 8 ends with a lingering sense of aftermath, the kind that follows a realization you can't unlearn. Tommy walks away changed, not because he lost everything, but because he finally understands what he was fighting for was already gone. And that understanding is heavier than failure. It forces him to question who he's been trying to be this whole time, the fixer, the protector, the man who holds everything together. This episode quietly dismantles that identity and leaves him standing without armor. What's most unsettling is how calm everything feels at the end. There's no chaos, no collapse in the traditional sense. Life continues. People keep working, decisions still need to be made, but the meaning behind those actions has shifted. Tommy now knows that every move forward will be made on unstable ground. There's no grand reset coming, no clean slate, just consequences unfolding slowly, one choice at a time. And that makes the future feel more dangerous than ever. Rebecca's fear, Cammy's faith, Nate's cold clarity, Galliano's brutal honesty, all of it converges here. Episode 8 makes it clear that these characters are no longer moving toward the same goal. They're bracing for impact in their own ways. Some are preparing to protect themselves, others are still holding on to hope, and Tommy is caught in between, fully aware now that he can't save everyone. That realization doesn't make him stronger, it makes him human. This is why Landman Season 2, Episode 8 hits so hard. It doesn't rely on shock, it relies on truth, the kind that creeps in slowly and stays with you long after the episode ends. It asks an uncomfortable question. How far can loyalty take you when the thing you're loyal to no longer exists? And more importantly, how much damage can silence do before it becomes irreversible? As the season moves forward, one thing is clear. The danger Rebecca sensed never left.